Episode 10, Mistakes. Welcome back. This is the 10th and final episode of our series Compensation Behind the Scenes, where we go in-depth on the internal workings of our multiplayer social game Compensation, and talk about some related computer science along the way. In this episode, we're going to be going over the mistakes we made while making Compensation, and what we would have done differently. Without further ado, let's begin. Honestly, it's a miracle Compensation has made it as far as it has. When we first started, none of us had any idea what we were doing. I had a bit of art experience and the other founders had some coding experience, so we decided to make a game. Honestly, something like a game jam or something probably would have been more our size at the time. That being said, it is surprising to see how far we've come in 2 years. When we started Compensation, we had no idea how we wanted things to look. We threw together low poly and high poly assets, hand-scribbled textures and PBR textures, and called it a day. Our art style has evolved from there to be much better, but it's still not on par with what we could have done with a fresh start. That being said, our current combination of a few textures sprinkled in with a lot of solid colors can be quite endearing at times. This one really became a problem for 1.5.0. When I was working on shipping to Oculus App Lab, I had to spend 20 versions of the game just to get the performance to a workable level, and even then we got kicked back once for a spot in the lounge that tanked your performance. This was especially noticeable in the Legacy Lounge, hence why we pulled it from the room listings. In fact, to this day, if you leave the Legacy Lounge on Quest, your game will crash due to a Unity bug. Even for the third rewrite of Compensation, we still had no idea how to architect things. We threw together singletons, statics, and some horrible link methods all over the place, and fixed the gaps with spit and duct tape. It's a horror to maintain at times, especially for old API code. Along the lines of my previous statement, we didn't have a strong, foolproof foundation to build things on. Even the matchmaking system wasn't dependable. To this day, if you say you have a networking problem, even as a joke, you'll probably give one of our developers a panic attack. Now, this can seem very doom and gloom, and it is, but I feel it's important to highlight our mistakes and how we're working to resolve them. Transparency is one of the biggest things we have going for us, and we intend to keep that intact as much as we possibly can. First things first, we should have taken longer to plan out the game before we started developing. Although I love working on projects and it usually is more efficient to prototype a feature than to plan it, it's also important to plan the overall game before throwing yourself at it wholeheartedly. That brings me to my next point. It's important to prototype features before you make a decision. It's fun and can bring a whole new insight into how you should be architecting things. Task branches are a wonderful thing, use them. Next up, take it slow. You don't need to be working 8 hours a day on an indie game that doesn't bring in any money. Another major thing that would have benefited us in the long run would have been to make a lot of concept art. It would have helped establish our art direction as well as giving us a general goal to work towards and something to show users without having to build a feature first. Lastly, the biggest thing I can say we messed up on was communication. Far too many times I developed a feature or one of the other developers did, only to realize we either built the same thing or built something the other hated. This all could have been solved by simply communicating. Well, that was a doozy. I sincerely hope you enjoyed this series and look forward to the next one. Maybe you even learned something, who knows. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.